what are the top 3 things that people you guide and coach and follow you on social media come to you for and say their number 1 issue is?
Oh, for men, they do suffer from a lot of infidelity. The women are cheating on the men.
This is Sadia Khan, a self-proclaimed licensed psychologist who charges hundreds of dollars an hour for her therapy services. After her podcast clips blew up on every short-form app, she amassed millions of followers and grew to pretty high levels of fame. But then, people started digging. It began with short-tempered replies in the comments of her videos. Then she was accused of being a fraudulent therapist. And just a few days ago, Abba and Preach made a video proving she forged her master's degree in psychology.
This fake Photoshop degree of a master's was on her website. It has no date. When do you ever see a degree with no date of issue?
No date.
Do you see the name? That is a clearly photoshopped on top of this degree.
There's plenty of other claims made in that video, like how she allegedly slept with a married man, and apparently she was charging like $8,000 for her consultation services, to which she later denied, but we don't even need to get into all of that to conclude that this is some pretty high-scale grifting at work. This is what happens when you try to be someone you're not in the digital age. Eventually, someone is going to do their due diligence, find out the truth, and tarnish your reputation. I think it's reaching a point where grifters will never be able to thrive in the way they used to even a decade ago. Why? Because, for better or worse, the younger generations trust no one. So in this video, I'll explain how propaganda and grifting has changed, why boomers were more willing to be lied to, and what I believe is the next evolution of social media and authenticity. Take a look at this advertisement. Notice how ridiculous it sounds? Around the 1930s, cigarette companies would dress models up in white coats and pose them as a throat doctor. They convinced the general public that cigarettes were making you cough not because they were bad for your health, but because they had too much dust, germs, or not enough menthol in them. Smoke a fresh cigarette and more doctors smoke Camels than any other brand were just some of the many misleading advertisements being displayed back then. Now, obviously, this wasn't a new phenomenon. The term snake oil salesman originated in the 19th century when shady salesmen created their own knockoff tonics out of alcohol, cocaine, and opium and claimed the drink could treat arthritis and soothe sore muscles. And people have been scamming other people with fake products and credentials for centuries, but what separates even the 1950s from now is simple. It was much more easier to get away with it. The average person had very little sources for inside information and truth during this time. There was the newspaper, the TV, and if you actually went the extra mile, you could pick up books related to something you questioned. Contrast that with today, and while there is a greater potential for information overload, we now have a much greater capacity to form our own opinions without being indoctrinated into some political ideology. Yes, echo chambers are rampant online, but it doesn't take nearly as much effort in searching to discern the nuance and get an objective view on things. For instance, you go to a site like Ground News and you can see that no right-leaning media sources are reporting on an analysis that found nearly 1 million Americans might fall into poverty under Trump's tariffs. If you were only capable of tuning into right-leaning news, you might have completely missed this. Similarly, you can check out all the news sources on the US inflation increase and see how each media outlet is framing it on the left, the right, and the center. In one right-leaning article, they used language like remains below 3% to make it feel like a trivial matter, while in several left-leaning articles, they used the term worsened to make the matter feel more significant. I'm always encouraging you guys to become a more free thinker and do the research required to reach a more accurate conclusion on things, and that is why I am partnering with Ground News as today's sponsor for this video. Ground News is amazing. I've been using it for a while now. It's basically the best way to get all the news from all different political sides into one platform. They work with 3 independent news organizations to rate the factuality and bias of media outlets. They show you how reliable the reporting practices of a news outlet reporting on the story is. They show you who is funding the publication, and they even show you your own news consumption habits and your blind spots so that you don't get trapped in an echo chamber. There is no better way to strengthen your ability to think critically about what's going on in the world right now than using a site like Ground News, and it's why I've been using them for so long. So if you want to see the nuance in every media story and protect yourself from radicalization, you should sign up for their Vantage plan, which gives you unlimited access to their news sources. This is what I use, and they are giving you guys a deal for the Vantage plan, 40% off if you use my link ground.news/Hastings. That's also the first link in the description, or you can just scan the QR code that you see on screen right now. So most of the time in 1950s to 1970s America, you were really going to be influenced by whatever was being shown to you in the news or who you surrounded yourself with the most. And in the case of cigarettes, if your family smoked cigs and the culture saw it as normal, it didn't even matter if it was bad. Everyone was going to keep doing it. This embodies the mindset of the mid to late 20th century American. Not only was it more difficult to see beyond the grifts, but also even if you knew you were being lied to, it didn't matter all that much. Why? Because the system that was lying to you was still giving you a favorable life outcome. The push for suburban life in the 50s and 70s is a great example of this. In the 1950s, developers like William Levitt, often called the king of suburbia, built mass-produced neighborhoods called Levittowns that sold homes with convenience and community at the forefront. Ads for these homes frequently featured smiling, homogeneous families and the promise of a peaceful, prosperous life in the suburbs. The imagery of the happy, idealistic nuclear family with no blemishes was often far from the reality of suburban living, with abusive relationships, urban sprawl, and annoying commutes also being a part of that deal, and the perfect vibes of these ads certainly felt fake. But the people didn't care, because what they got in return, stability and community, was far worth the price of being propagandized. In 1970, the average US home cost approximately 3.5 times the household's yearly income. That means you only had to work an average salary job for 3.5 years to afford a home. And that job, it came with its own sort of grift, loyalty benefits. Corporations advertised lifelong careers with pensions and retirement security, and in many cases, they actually got it. In other words, even if they knew they were being lied to, the propagandizers were giving the average person enough to shut up, keep their head down, and keep working. And while all this was happening, grifters were making waves left and right, and sometimes they were even getting exposed. Think about the oil companies in the 70s running tearjerker ads about pollution, literally blaming consumers for litter while they kept pumping out plastics. Or drug companies selling Valium as the cure for suburban stress while creating mass addiction. These were lies hidden in plain sight, but the only people really revolting against them were seen as the hippies or the outcasts. Now let's contrast all of this with the world that Gen Z inherited. The average home now costs 5 times the average salary in most cities. As a result, only about 3% of all home buyers are Gen Z. Among 27-year-olds, only 32.6% of Gen Zers owned their home in 2024, compared to 38.4% of Gen Xers and 40.5% of boomers at the same age. Personal debt for Gen Z averages over $94,000, with credit card debt particularly common. And job security? It barely exists anymore. In 1 minute, you could be replaced because the talent pool is so competitive and it's so easy to apply to thousands of jobs in a day thanks to internet job postings. And now we're being fed the idea that the only way out is to participate in the gig economy of isolation. I'll let this clip of Tim Dillon, which largely inspired the making of this video, explain it better.
Wait, you're lying to us and I can't own a house? I can barely have a job? I have to be forced into the gig economy? I get to deliver burritos? And I have to listen to this bullshit? And I have to pretend that this is all real? And I can't afford frozen yogurt with my girlfriend? And I have to go along with this horse shit? And I have nothing and no money for it? If you're doing something, you want to get something out of it. If you are going to delude yourself and believe the bullshit on the news, you have to get a little bit out of it. We're asking people to believe all of this stuff and telling them, and the reward for that, okay, is to deliver a Caesar salad to someone.
But taking away the stability and success that was more guaranteed with hard work was just the start. Gen Z lives on this thing which gives you access to any information you want, if you know where to look. Now let's be honest, the internet is heavily regulated at this point. What you can and can't post on social media is determined by these big corporations. But despite that, enough slips through the cracks and gets exposed about the government that Gen Z's trust in any big corporations became rightly destroyed. In fact, the internet is where the younger generations first found out about shareholder primacy, maximizing profits, and the dissolution of the middle class in videos just like this one. And that means nobody can hide. As a result, a 2023 Gallup survey found that few Gen Z ages 12 to 26 trust the news, Congress, the presidency, or big tech, with only 1 in 6 or fewer having a great deal or quite a lot of trust in each. Fewer than 25% trust the Supreme Court or the criminal justice system. Only 19% of youth trust social media companies. As of spring 2024, only 22% of US adults trust the federal government to do the right thing most of the time, one of the lowest levels in decades. The only institutional exception to all of this is something that can be objectively measured and repeated, which is science. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Cole, even though Gen Z has high distrust in big institutions and is often overly skeptical, grifting has still been wildly popular online. And to that, I would say, yes, it has had its moments. I've already gone into depth about the early days of the self-help industry online, which is a good example of this. In many ways, it was actually a resurgence of grifting, reaching heights like never before. Because while grifting was only reserved to the big corporations before, now all you needed was extreme conviction, confidence, a few graphs showing your sales, and some professional lighting to play yourself off as an expert in any given field. When a lot of Gen Z was younger and not yet aware of how much they got gypped of wealth and stability compared to previous generations, grifters actually kind of thrived online. This peaked around 2020 when everybody was lonely and looking for answers to their problems they could no longer escape through busy work or friends. It's why Andrew Tate, a dude who built his fortune on cam girls, was able to sell so much of his $50 a month Discord group to young impressionable teens. It's also why crypto had its little rise to popularity in 2021. Crypto felt like a way to escape the centralization and authority of an untrustworthy government, a way to take the power from them and bring it back to the people. But in the end, it got uprooted by desperate con artists looking to make money by promoting meme coins and quickly rug pulling them after. Logan Paul's CryptoZoo is a great adjacent example of this. If you don't remember or aren't familiar, Logan Paul had planned on making a game called CryptoZoo where you open eggs for very ugly looking mishmashes of animals that were NFTs with real world value in the form of crypto. Millions were invested into these eggs before you could even use them, and even though Logan said dozens of times that the game was coming, even after getting exposed, it never did, and he barely refunded the people who bought into it. Of course, there is some personal responsibility on someone who trusted a cesspool rat like Logan Paul, but there questionably wasn't enough dirt on him yet in order to completely distrust the guy. That really depends on who you ask, though. Another industry I'm passionate about exposing lies in is the fitness industry. The fitness industry is full of fake natty grifters putting Lifetime Natural in their Instagram bio. I was more so in the fitness industry back in like 2017, 2018, and I'll tell you that grift used to last a pretty long time, like 5 years. But now if you try to do something like that, you're gonna get exposed and people are not gonna believe you pretty damn quickly. Prime example of this is Hussein Farhat. He went from a twig to absolutely sauced in 6 months. Blew up on social media for a few months, doubled down on his natty status, and now, because he refuses to tell the truth, his reputation is ruined and his videos get destroyed with dislikes. So not only did Gen Z get the American dream stripped away from them by big institutions, but even the people who are supposed to be on their side, the everyday content creators, can't even be trusted to do the morally right thing if big money is involved. Everybody is fighting for their attention, everybody is trying to get money from them, and everything feels fake, forced, and full of ulterior motives. I'm nearly out of breath talking about all the bullshit scam grifts online that Gen Z has had to go through, but now even the grifts and the propaganda from big institutions are more dystopian and Orwellian-like. Our president is using AI of himself to threaten war on Chicago, Russia's pumping out AI deepfakes and teaching chatbots to lie, and advertisements are featuring more AI-generated people, voices, and scripts. But here's the good thing that I think comes out of this. They are getting old enough and have been putting up with it long enough to no longer let the show go on. So here's what I think comes next. If big institutions know Gen Z is harder to propagandize, but they also aren't willing to make their living conditions easier, how can they win their trust again? And if traditional advertisements barely work like they used to because they feel threaded with lies and fakeness, how do you get Gen Z to participate in the economy? I know these questions don't matter to most of us, but one question that is tied to those is, how the hell do we all start trusting and cooperating with each other again? Well, the only solution I see is in the death of grifting. I'm gonna let all you marketers in on a little secret, as someone who has studied Gen Z and is Gen Z themselves and understands what they do and don't like. If you want to sell something to Gen Z, or if you want to make an impact on them, you can't really lie. Their skepticism and acute senses to bullshit will allow them to see right through it. You have to be authentic and make your advertisement not feel like an advertisement. The best ads I've seen that I haven't immediately scoffed at or skipped are the ones that feel like they're coming from a real person who has genuinely had their life changed by what they're selling or genuinely believes in what they are selling and talking about. These ads don't need fancy lighting or high budgets. In fact, they often work better if they're the opposite of that. If you want to establish trust in a generation that sees roughly 4,000 to 10,000 ads and bullshit media headlines, you have to be real. I so admire our generation's skepticism and ability to sniff out bullshit. If somebody wants to sell something now, or like I said, make a deep impact that is sustainable, they really can't fake what they are selling or what they're trying to say to influence people. Yes, you can still scam gullible, unintelligent people for a little while, but eventually it will come crashing down and burn and bite you in the ass, just like we saw with Sadia Khan. And does that mean grifters are going away forever? Unfortunately not. There will always be people looking to take advantage of other people's insecurities to sell them something that they don't actually need. And once technology reaches its next wave, those people will be sure to take advantage of its novelty and lack of general knowledge surrounding it to scam people. But I don't think it's gonna work the way that it used to. I want you to remain skeptical when it makes sense, but also try to remain level-headed and emotionally regulated when you see something fake and propagandized that you disagree with. To make sure to weigh in all sides of an article or social media post's claims before believing it. To question whether the experts online are really experts, because if we keep doing that, then grifters will suffocate. As for when Gen Z will accept propaganda again, like the way the older generations did, I don't think that even if you gave them housing and community, they would fall into it and accept it. This globalized, interconnected world has exposed so many lies that we used to live with. So the way I see it, the only path forward that's going to get people to participate in society, cooperate, and want to make progress in life again is to be as real and authentic as possible. And because of that, I truly believe we are witnessing the death of effective grifting and propaganda as we know it. Let me know if you think I'm absolutely wrong in the comments. Let me know your thoughts, what you agree and disagree with. I'm open to discussion. I appreciate you watching till the end. If you enjoy my video essays exposing modern issues and bringing awareness to them, you can check out the playlist right here. Don't binge watch too many though, as I always say. Go enjoy life, and I love you guys. Peace.